All right, y'all. So leaving personal jurisdiction of the in rem variety behind, we are gonna jump into long arm statutes. And long arm statutes are essentially they limit a court's ability to exercise personal jurisdiction. And so the picture in the book and the picture that you know that Goggin put out is that if the court's ability, according to the 14th, so the 14th due process clause allows personal jurisdiction in this amount, right? And assume that this is a huge amount. And so some states enact long arm statutes that limit the extent in which they can exercise personal jurisdiction. So in this case, right, maybe a New York long arm statute may limit it and say, you know what, not in the full extent of the constitutional ability, but we'll limit it to just this extent. And maybe that's for purposes of, limiting the docket, right? And so some states will, as opposed to New York right here, we can have a state like California that says, you know what, we'll just let you exercise to the full extent that the due process clause allows you to exercise as well. And so there's no necessarily a limit like New York, right? So the case to kind of illustrate this point is the case called Bensusan Restaurant versus King. And I made these notes, the facts of it really short because, I mean, I don't, as far as relevance goes, I think this is all you really need. But P, the plaintiff is Bensusan, and Bensusan is a restaurant in New York. And apparently this restaurant is like a big name restaurant in New York who had a club called the Blue Note. And D is he's a king, but his last name is also King. And he's a Missouri dude who opened a club called the Blue Note. So this, I think, was the beginnings of the internet age. And so I think they, posted their names and whatnot there. Bensusan was upset and sued D for copyright infringement in a New York court. And D said, uh, you know, I'm not going to change my name because you don't have the authority. And you can't haul me into a New York court anyway. So he just flat out refused, which is kind of funny if you think about it. But the question to the federal New York, to the court is, does federal New York law, I think this is supposed to be long arm statute, allow? Okay. Does the federal New York district, oh, this is district court. I'm an idiot. Okay. District court have personal jurisdiction over the Missouri resident in this case. And um, let me tidy this up. You know what I'm saying? District court. I think it was a federal court as well. And the case, I mean, the whole thing of this was that King, there was not enough to, or sorry, it didn't comply with the long arm statute. And so the New York court could not exercise personal jurisdiction. And the language of the long arm statute said that the harm has to be committed in New York. Okay. And so this was the case where, the examples that came up were, if Ben had a bazooka and he was sitting in New Jersey and he saw Susie on across the border where in New York and he shot the bazooka and harmed Susie, right? The injury happened in New York, but the tort technically did not happen in New York because he was not in New York. And so under New York's long arm statute, they could not exercise personal jurisdiction over well, king in this instance. But right, this is an example of a restrictive long arm statute. And so right, like there are states that don't limit it as hard, but this is kind of to illustrate the point that long arm statutes need to be looked at if you're thinking about hauling people into court. Okay. Um, yeah, that's really good about this one, man. Let's go on to the next one.